friends and colleagues. My name is Audrey Moorehead, and I serve on the Dallas Bar Association Board of Directors. And it is absolutely my honor and pleasure to be here with you today so that we, along with the Dallas Bar Association, Allied Bars, Equity Committee, and the Dallas Asian American Bar Association, to honor our own living legend, Michele Wong Krause. I can't tell you how excited I am and how scared she is because Michele and I have been friends since I was in law school. And I have wanted to interrogate her for over a decade. And now you and I are going to get to learn some things about Michele Wong Krause that I've always wanted to know, and I hope you find her to be as amazing as I always have. Well, hello, Michele.
Well, hello, Judge. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am so excited.
I know you
to
are.
be here. Yeah, I really am. Because, you know, we go way, way, way back. And as much as I feel that I know about you, and as close as I feel to you, and I do feel extremely close to you, there are many things that I have always wanted to know and many things that I've always wanted to say, and it's given me an opportunity to do that. And I want to start out by saying that we, and I believe you agree, that we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And, you know, you're not just incredibly tall, might I say, but yet your shoulders have lifted so many people up, including myself. So I'm especially honored to have this dialogue with you today, and I want to kind of jump right into it. Can you tell us kind of how it all began? You are multi-ethnic, multicultural. You've been the president of both the Dallas Asian American Bar Association, correct?
Yes.
And the Dallas Hispanic Bar Association.
See.
How does one get to that point in life? Where did you begin?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about my background. So my father is Chinese, Japanese, Hawaiian. He was born in Hawaii. And my mother is Mexican. She was born in Monterrey, Mexico. And they were pen pals. And that's how they met. And they got married. I was born in California. And so I have a multi-ethnic background because I'm also Native Hawaiian in addition to Chinese, Japanese, and Mexican. So yo puedo hablar español. And a lot of people don't expect that when they see Michele Wong or Michele Wong Krause. They don't expect that my other language is Spanish. They expect Mandarin or something else like that. So I guess education was always very important in my family. My dad was the first of the family in Hawaii to go to college. He went to Purdue. My mother graduated high school, and she went to college at night while having a full-time job and raising 3 children here in the United States. She became a single mother when my parents divorced when I was 10 years old. So I've always known by seeing my mother as a role model of how important education is. So there was never a question that I would not go to college. It was I was going to college. So I went to college and at University of Texas at Arlington. And then I had to make a decision whether I wanted to go into law or take a chance at acting. So I chose law. And I chose law because I wanted to help people. I could use some of my thespian talents in trial, and I became a litigator. And that is how I got here. And I went to SMU Law School, which I'm a very proud graduate of.
Well, what influenced your decision to go to law school? I mean, you said law school, or you're going to become Academy Award winning actress, which we all know you from, bar none, that you are actually the star of, even when you're not.
It's in my own mind.
In your own mind, but you are a fantastic actress, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the things you've done in the community, including bar none. But I want to ask you, some people grow up and they have lawyers in their family. They have people who work in the legal field. Did you have, or were you influenced by someone in the legal field to even put that on your radar?
Actually, I did. My great uncle was a lawyer in Monterrey, Mexico, and I saw how he contributed to make his clients help them resolve their problems, but also he was such a leader in the legal community in Monterey. I mean, people would come from all over the country to come and listen to him and get wisdom from him, because he was such an amazing man, and loved him very much. And he was a role model for me as well.
Well, bouncing off of that, so you've gone to law school, and now, so what's your plan in law school? You want to help people, but there are millions of ways to help people. So what was your career plan when you left law school, and did it turn out like you anticipated?
Well, in law school, I was going to be an international lawyer, because I could speak Spanish and I could do all these extra high-level international. But as I went through law school, I realized that I wanted to help people like me, because I come from a very humble background. And so I wanted to help people, and the way that I could do it is going into the personal injury area of the law. That was where I got hired first at 𝐏𝐥𝐞𝐚𝐬. I was the first attorney hired there right out of law school, and he was a solo practitioner, and then I was the first attorney. And so I began doing workers' compensation, which I still do today, and I always felt that my place as a lawyer was on the underdog side. I think it'd be very hard for me to transfer to a big insurance company or a big defense firm, because I truly believe that lawyers pick the area that speaks to them. You know, some people feel like I can only do plaintiff's work. Some people feel like I can only do defense work, and it's the rare person that can switch sides.
I agree, absolutely. You kind of have a spirit and a calling. I believe that for many attorneys, especially like you, the helping people part of it is a true calling, and you make a lifelong commitment to it, and you're generally really not happy doing anything else. Having said that, you know, I've done some family law, and I believe you may have had some experience in the family courts and civil courts working with children, doing guardianship work. How is your experience working in the courts been?
Well, I think my guardian ad litem work is actually my favorite area of the law. So in civil cases, I've been blessed to have appointments from some judges to represent the best interests of a minor who's been injured somehow. And my only interest is the minor's interest. It's not the lawyer's interest, it's not the parent's interest, it's the minor's interest, and that is truly my passion. I want to make sure that settlement is fair, that we know that all the injuries that minor has suffered, and that we keep whatever net amount of money for the minor safe, so that neither the minor nor the parent can take 20 of their friends to Acapulco. So we want to have those net monies available for the minor after they reach age 18, so that they can make really qualitative decisions of paying for college, paying for vocational schooling that will make their lives better. And I want to make sure that those monies are there for them.
So you've done a lot in your career, both as working with a firm, for a firm, having your own firm, and then also doing litigation and working on behalf of children in the civil courts. Can you think of any ethical or professional challenges that you may have encountered that may have been associated with ethnicity or gender?
Well, I know when I first started working as a lawyer in the late 80s, I remember hearing this client coming in for a appointment, and this is the first time he's met me, and I heard him lean over to my legal assistant and say, "Does she speak English?" Because I went by Michele Wong. So for 10 years, I had never changed my name until, after, I guess, 15, 20 years. I changed it to my husband's name, but for the first 10 years, for sure, I went by Michele Wong. And so there were very, very few Asian attorneys in Dallas, Texas. So the way I overcame that was I would introduce myself and then immediately go into talking about their case, putting them at ease, that I knew what I was talking about, and yes, I did speak English. So I learned that back then I had a very young face, and a female Asian youngster. Sometimes some of the older clients would have some concerns, but once I jumped into the meat of their case and talked about their options and pitfalls, then they relaxed and said, "Okay, she knows what she's talking about." So that was, I guess, an ethnic challenge. Professional challenges are, I guess, you have to be really aware of potential hazards and trust your gut. So for an example is, I do workers' compensation, and so I'm looking for clinics where my clients can receive quality care, and sometimes the medical clinics come and they're looking for patients. And so I had someone take me out to lunch one time, like 2 or 3 of them, and it wasn't the content, actually the words that they said, but it was a feeling. I had a gut feeling there was something wrong about their approach to me and getting clients. And so I remember slipping in a mention of, I'm very ethical, and if I ever have any questions, I always call the ethics hotline at the State Bar of Texas, and never heard from them again. And then 2 years later, I see in the newspaper that they've been indicted for fraud. So it's trust your gut feeling, because 90% of the time it's going to be right.
That is so important, and I think a lot of women and people of color may struggle in that area sometimes, in having that confidence to trust their instincts about those types of issues. And I learned a lot from you over the years. As a matter of fact, I recall, and perhaps you may or may not have trusted your gut instinct when you allowed a first-year law student to attach herself to you and follow you around, literally around the country, but specifically to Dallas Bar Association events. As a law student, you served as both an ally and a sponsor to me by allowing me to shadow you and watch you as you matriculated through the Dallas Bar Association, and you were serving on the Dallas Bar Board of Directors. How did you get involved with the Dallas Bar Association, and what was it like to become a member of the Board of Directors?
Well, I first became involved with the local sister bars, what we call sister bars, which is the Dallas Asian American Bar Association and the Dallas Hispanic Bar Association, J.L. Turner. I believe now we have Dallas Women Lawyers Association and LGBTQ Bar as well are now considered sister bars. But that's how I first became involved. I was looking for kinship, someone getting to know people who had some experiences like I have had, both personal and professionally. And so I actually started in the Asian bar and became president from, I think it was 1994 through 1996. And then I kind of switched over to the Dallas Hispanic Bar Association and was president, I believe, in 2002. So they're very different bar associations, just like, the Asian culture is very different from the Hispanic culture. So when I was president of the Asian bar, we were, intellectual property, M&A. We being DABA members were represented in the higher or larger firms. When I switched over to the Hispanic bar, we were talking more of a people practice membership, PI, criminal, family. And it's a very different type of association, at the core was doing what's best for their membership, and then with experienced attorneys. And it's always good to have a smaller group of networking people that you can bounce things off, and that you don't get lost in the larger Dallas Bar Association. So because it's a smaller groups, and so you get more intense and stronger friendships. And so through that, I became involved in the Dallas Bar Association. So back then, it was very, very difficult to get elected to the bar board. So I hooked up all the sister bars at that time to try and make a concerted efforts to get attorneys of color to be elected to the board. Okay, not appointed, but elected. We did a concerted effort for like 6 years in a row. 6 years in a row, we had great candidates. Could not get them elected. Finally, we did get the first person of color that was elected to the board, Hispanic, and I'm talking Hispanic, because obviously we have the great Rhonda Hunter, who was on the board and eventually became the first DBA president of color. But it was from a Hispanic view that we were trying to increase. Not even increase, just have that. So it ended up being me. I was the first Hispanic to ever be elected to the Dallas Bar Board of Directors, and I was also the first attorney of Asian descent to also be elected to the Dallas Bar Board of Directors. But I was part of a project from the Dallas Asian American Bar Association to get a seated position on the board, because Al Ellis got J.L. Turner Association board seat and a Hispanic bar seat. And it was MABA back then. And so we had 2 seats at the board for those 2 sister bars, but we didn't have one for the Asian bar. So Susie Fulton and I, over 2 years, met with a lot of leaders and explained, we're one of the fastest growing minorities here in North Texas. We have done a lot. Here's what we have done, and we eventually got a seat on the board of directors for DABA.
That is so significant. There's a lot of pressure sometimes with being the first. It is a great privilege, but it's burdened with great responsibility. You've been the first of many things, and we're going to pursue some of those. But how does that manifest itself? How do you think about it when you think about the fact I am the first? How does that feel?
Well, you're right. It is a great responsibility, but I felt that I had to continue the work of people like Adelpha Callejo and L.A. Bedford and move it forward. I mean, for them to even become members of the Dallas Bar Associations, they're the first generation that crossed that color line, here, for example, at the Dallas Bar, okay? And to be that next generation of, okay, now we can be members. Now we've got to get into the leadership, because you've got to be at the table to bring your community's experiences and needs, because sometimes it's not on their radar screen, they being the majority board members. And I'm just picking Dallas Bar because this is where we're at. But, you know, it wasn't a purposeful exclusion, or it was that it wasn't on their radar screen, language challenges or, you know, things like that, going into the communities of color. But bringing along your attorneys of Hispanic origin and Asian origin and, of course, African American origin is critical, because we reflect what our board association members are.
Absolutely, and I wonder if you could just speak a couple of seconds to me, because this has always been a source of some frustration to me, and is that it's more likely than not, at least in years past, and it's probably still true today, that lawyers of color, and maybe to some extent women, are more likely to be small firm and solo practitioners. And just the fact that they have that type of professional structure, it makes it challenging to seek elected leadership of the Dallas Bar. And as opposed to people who are at large firms, who have email machines and who have the type of marketing, sometimes it feels as though the playing field is not level. Did you have that experience? And if so, how do you suggest that lawyers navigate that today?
Well, you're exactly right. State bar statistics bear that out. The majority, more than the majority, I think it's almost 65% of state bar attorneys are in solo and small firms. And then when you extrapolate that and look at attorneys of color, that number is even greater, all right? And so you don't have the same infrastructure as you do in a large firm with a partner or an associate or a paralegal that can help cover while you are at a board meeting or at an event. So you're exactly right, it is extremely difficult, I think, for some solo practitioners and small firm attorneys to give and volunteer their time to bar associations. I think what you first do is look at events and positions where you can volunteer that help you and your firm and your area of law, perhaps. For example, I was the creator of Dallas Minority Attorney Program. Okay, so that came through the Dallas Bar Association. I saw a need for CLE that was geared to the people practice of law, office management, technology, getting to meet the judges, that was worth being a whole day away from my firm, and that would benefit me. So I did it in small steps, and I still to this day I get benefit from going to the Dallas Minority Attorney Program, and it has helped a lot of people and has grown over the years. But that was one of my first steps into, I guess, leadership in coming to the Dallas Bar and say, listen, I would like to do this program. And I really think it's one of the biggest minority programs that the Dallas Bar puts on.
And it's won awards at the state level. Speaking of, you also took your leadership from the Dallas Bar Association and it kind of translated into state bar leadership. How did you get on the state bar board, and what was that experience?
Well, I was, urged to take a look at, hey, we would like you to think of going into the state bar board. There was a position that was actually kind of open, and I talked to my friends, I got all my signatures, and then ran. And I was fortunate in not being opposed. So I believe I was the first Asian American and the first Asian American to be elected to the State Bar Board from Dallas. Well, period. Actually, period, ever from any across the state of Texas. So those were one of the firsts that happened at the State Bar Board. I loved looking at how the different bar associations and different attorneys across the state of Texas, how they looked at the challenges that attorneys faced. I mean, from technology to grievances to minority challenges and CLEs.
You actually ascended to the highest level of leadership in the American Bar Association, serving on the Board of Governors. What was that like?
Oh, it was amazing. I started through being following Judge Rhonda Hunter around at the National Conference of Bar Presidents. She said, you should come to ABA. You don't have to go to the regular ABA. You can start through the National Conference of Bar Presidents. And I said, okay. So I started getting to know people, and I liked what I saw. The CLE, the camaraderie, and the exchange of information was so valuable. And then I got into the ABA side, American Bar Association, regular side, and started volunteering on the committees, and the Hispanic Commission, and IOLTA, Interest on Lawyers, Trust Accounts. And I felt that I was doing something important. In the Hispanic Commission, I had a project called for a uniform translation of Miranda into Spanish.
Wow, yes.
So that was one of my biggest projects I've ever done. And so what happened was it passed through the ABA's House of Delegates, a resolution that we should have a uniform translation, because there are so many mistranslations that are happening. And it's good for both sides, because the prosecutor wants to know that the Miranda has been given correctly and in an understandable and correct language of Spanish, and the defense attorney wants to make sure that his client has gotten the Miranda so that he understands his rights. So it's a win-win. And so not only that, we came back and we actually put together stakeholders across the board, from prosecutors to certified interpreters, to defense counsel, and came up with a uniform translation of Miranda into Spanish. And it was actually done into a pilot project in New Orleans. And so that was one of the biggest and most rewarding projects I worked on. And then that got me to the attention of a lot of people who became supporters of me. And when they came a spot on the Board of Governors of American Bar Association, they said, we would really want you to run for that. We think that you could bring a lot of knowledge and experience to that position. And so I got my signatures, and I was elected to the ABA Board of Governors. But then the pandemic hit. So after a year, that's when the pandemic began, and then we had to change modes. We had to change, oh my gosh, how are the nation's lawyers going to handle the pandemic? We're shut down. What do we need to do? Within 6 weeks, we had maybe 30 webinars out on how to handle the pandemic circumstances. And so we pivoted, and that was not easy, because obviously this has never happened before. So we are dealing with, what are we going to do in this crisis situation? How are we going to serve our members of the ABA? And, that was a challenge. And so I think the ABA handled it very well, but it kind of sidetracked a lot of projects that I was thinking of doing on the ABA board, but this was important. This was important.
It was very impactful, and even coming out of or in the midst of the pandemic, you were able to advocate on a very high level for a special award that was given in the Asian American community at an ABA meeting. Do you recall?
Oh, yes, I
that?
do.
Because I remember tears being shed in an American Bar Association meeting. And you know, lawyers, we're not all that emotional, but this just made a difference for so many people. Can you talk just a minute about what that was?
Yes. I was on a subcommittee that helped choose the Medal of Honor recipient. And there were I was one of two Asians on the subcommittee. It was Dale Manami. And he had been up before, had not gotten it. When we first began discussions, right before we first began, I knew that there was that the momentum was going for another candidate, and I was talking to the various committee members and said, well, yes, you know, I think Dale would be great, but usually it's the ABA president's choice that wins, even though I think that that would be a very a great choice in who I personally would choose. So me and my colleague, 𝐧𝐨𝐭𝐞, we worked that subcommittee, and we explained to them, Dale Manami did the case that basically overturned Korematsu. Korematsu was the gentleman who was interned during World War II, only because he was Japanese, of Japanese descent. And this basically overturned it, and it was like Brown versus Board of Education for Asian Americans. And that is something that I don't think that the rest of the committee really understood what that meant to the Asian American community, what that attorney meant to the Asian community, and why it was so important. So we were able, because we were at the table, we were able to explain why, and it was so important. And I believe that was the first attorney of Asian descent that ever won the Medal of Honor at the ABA.
You have been honored by the Southwest Jewish Congress. You received their Inspiring Women Award. You've received the Dallas Bar Association Joanna Moreland Outstanding Committee Chair Award. You've been given awards by the State Bar of Texas, the Dallas Hispanic Bar Association, the Dallas Women Lawyers Association 𝐓𝐵𝐸𝐵𝐸 Award. You've also received an award from the Greater Dallas Asian American Chamber of Commerce, the American Bar Association Partnership Award, and it shouldn't be any surprise that you received the Outstanding Minority Bar Leader Award also from the Dallas Bar Association. And that's just to name a few. But your commitment to community has expanded beyond the actual legal profession. As we sit here today, you are the first Asian American chair of the DART board, Dallas Area Rapid Transit. And are you also the first Hispanic?
First Latina.
First Latina chair of Dallas Area Rapid Transit. What is the size and breadth of this organization for which you are now the chair?
My goodness. It's a 15-member board. 13 member cities are part of DART. Our budget is over $1 billion, and we have 2 capital projects that totaling $1.5 billion each. Well, actually, it's more than that now, with our supply chain issues and our workforce issues that has gone up. So it's huge, the amount of money that is part of the budget, because when you're talking about public transit, we're building a transit system for the next 100 years with our Silver Line and our D2 capital projects, but it's also improving the rider experience for our everyday riders, because my belief is that the bus is the backbone of the transit agency. And so I feel that I've brought my experience as a young child riding buses to school to the dartboard. And that's why it's so important that we have a diversity of opinion around that board, because you bring your life experience with you and you make that agency or that board better for it.
Absolutely, and because Dallas is, and everybody looks at Dallas, right? Texas is huge, Dallas is huge, and the challenges that we have with transportation are those that other communities have, maybe on a smaller scale, but Dallas is always in the spotlight. So they've been watching your leadership internationally, but you have also risen to leadership on a national level in public transportation, if I understand correctly, and I do understand correctly. You have served on the board of directors for the American Public Transportation Association, impacting how transportation is viewed across the country. What was that experience like?
Well, again, this was where I was asked to consider being appointed to the board, and now to the executive committee of the board of public transportation. I had actually been trying to get out of some of the boards to free up some of my time, but this was too important, learning process, but also, again, bringing my experience not only from a large transit agency, but also my Hispanic and Asian community perspectives. Because one thing that sometimes is forgotten is Asian languages. Okay, so that was one of the things that I really pushed on, making sure that, don't forget, we have a lot of different Asian languages, with Vietnamese and Chinese being third and fourth after English and Spanish as commonly used languages. And that applies here locally, but also nationally. And so bringing and learning. I learn so much from being on the different boards, the national boards, whether it's the ABA Board of Governors or the American Public Transportation Association Board, from a national perspective, to see what is happening around the country and how similar some of our challenges are. And so we can learn from others without reinventing the wheel, and they can learn from us.
Absolutely. Your impact has been so great. And it boggles the mind, and one of the themes in a lot of these living legend conversations have always kind of turned into work-life balance, which I believe is both a literary and legal fiction. But you talked about trying to limit some of the time that you've been given to some of these boards, and I applaud you for that. It's very hard, because when you're good at what you do, people are always asking you to do something. But I've had the pleasure and the honor to watch you as a fantastic wife and an amazing mother. And I listed all these awards, but from the conversations that you and I have had in the time we've spent together, you are most proud of the family that you have. Can you tell us about your boys, about your fantastic husband, whom you've allowed me to share to some small extent? Thank you so much. But tell us about this great family that you've been able to have in addition to this fantastic career.
Yes, so my husband, Rick Krause, is also a lawyer. And then I have two sons, William and Andrew. So one of the things, I remember one time, I guess back in the 90s when my kids were smaller, and I was asked to speak on work-life balance. I almost laughed out loud because I just, I think as females, it's hard to balance work, volunteer, work, and your family life, okay? Because I felt like I wasn't doing anything well. And what I did is in that presentation, I said, well, here's what not to do. But what I explained is involving your children early on. For like when I was on the state bar board and we would have meetings out of town, I would bring my kids with me. They were fortunate to meet a lot of amazing lawyers. They met all the Texas Supreme Court justices. So they had very unique experiences, and they saw how important community service was to me. And I think they've internalized a lot of that as well. But I've always told them, try to leave the world a little bit better than what you found it. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to make sure that I've made it easier for my children to come after me in the legal field, other communities and attorneys of color to get that path into being an attorney and get comfortable with being leaders as well in the legal community. But that's what I did, is I involved them and brought them along with me, because I think it's very important for them to see that it's about community service as well.
Well, I do know that your children and your husband, very well supportive, had to watch you perform in the Bar None show. Now, Bar None, as probably everybody knows, is a variety show that's directed by and mostly starred in by lawyers and members of the legal profession. And you have been in Bar None many, many years.
Yes.
And it's raised over $1 million for
Yep.
the 𝐧𝐸𝐭 scholarship that now it gets distributed to all the law schools in our area. I know that your boys had to endure your presence on the stage, as have I. Talk a little bit about that experience and why that's important for you to donate so much of your time to.
Well, first of all, the cause is so important. Scholarships to students in law school, students of color, where sometimes their background doesn't allow them to have the financial strength to go through or to go through law school. So number one, that's the most important reason. But the second reason is, I guess I'm just a ham bone from a long time, and I will tell you, my sons and my husband would agree with that. But it's also the people that I meet there, because they are family, especially over the years. I know that I can depend on them, I can call on them. And once in Bar None, always in Bar None. It's like once a judge, always a judge. So you are always a part of the Bar None family. And the relationships that I have made are so incredible. Attorneys and judges I never would have met otherwise, because they don't work in my area of law. They may do intellectual property or whatever it is that they do. And that's the family. That's a secondary family for me, is Bar None. And just love those guys.
You're right that Bar None is a family, and I love it, and the Bar None family, of course, loves you. I want us to kind of close with a couple things. One is, if you could go back and talk to Michele when she was getting ready to go to law school, what would your advice to her be?
Number one, I guess I would say, tenacity is important. Keep on going keep on trying to achieve your goals. But number two, it's also that if one door closes, another door opens. And just because you may not be appreciated in one organization, doesn't mean that you won't be a stellar success and appreciated in another organization. So value yourself. You have worth, and just because you don't achieve maybe a goal of yours doesn't mean that you can't achieve a different goal that you never knew that you even wanted until it's presented to you. And then that impact is so much greater from that goal that maybe than the original goal. So be aware that just because you don't achieve a goal doesn't mean that you can't even do better at another goal.
Absolutely. That is so powerful, and it's a lesson that I certainly will take from this moment. I think this is a good time for us to thank Kane, Russell, Coleman, and Logan PC
Absolutely.
for sponsoring this opportunity for us to have this public dialogue. I have literally spent countless hours with you over these many, I mean, it's almost 20, it's 20 years. It's 20
Wow.
years, Michele, that we have, that you've tolerated me and that I have loved you.
Wow.
And I want to publicly say that, and that it will live on in infamy, that you are one of my best friends. It is no surprise to me that you manage $1 billion budget, because I've watched you negotiate airline tickets and hotel rooms to the point of the absolute consternation of the employees of said organizations. But you are just so good at what you do, and you are so humble. How do you maintain this humility? With all this you've done, you're still like, just, it's just Michele, like, just like you're the girl next door, but you're the president of, you're the chair of $1 billion agency.
I'm Asian, so we're very humble. We're a very humble culture. And I mean, that's all I can say. When I look at my resume, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good resume. I mean, I don't even think of what I've done. I just think of it in the present. But it's choosing friends. We saw something within you, Audrey Moorehead, 20 years ago. We knew that you were a rock star in the making, and we just wanted to facilitate that, and you have come up to be the rock star that we knew that you were going to be. And the volunteer and desire to serve, I see reflected in you as well. That is a great background to how important it is to never believe your own press.
That is so true. And nobody else believe my prayers. Don't do it. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to close us out. Is there something that I didn't ask that you wished I would have asked? Is there no, really? That's, we asked it. That's one of those interview questions that drives you nuts when I will never apply for another job as long as I live. But that is one of those interview questions. Is there something I didn't ask, or voir dire questions? So you're picking a jury. Is there something I didn't ask you that you wished I would have? And is there a philosophy or some parting words that you'd like to share with the lawyers and people that may be watching? We're celebrating your father's 90th birthday.
Yes.
Coming up. I know he must be incredibly proud of you.
He is, actually. He doesn't say much because he's Asian. He's very quiet about that, but a few years ago he did say he was very proud, and he follows me on Facebook when I do things or I get an award or something like this. So in a quiet way, I know that he's proud. And my mom was very proud when I would get these awards, especially the 𝐧𝐨𝐭𝐞, I think was the last award I got before she passed. And, you know, I was able to videotape it and give it to her, and she was very happy and very proud. And, you know, to me, that meant all the world to me.
Yes, you all were incredibly close, and she was a wonderful woman, and I'm proud to have had the opportunity to know her.
But I would say, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, your integrity, your reputation, your family and your friends, that's what you're going to remember. That is what is important. That's the legacy that you're going to leave. And you can't forget that. Life is so short. Keep your family close. Keep your friends close. Don't put them on the back burner. Do the best to be the best lawyer that you can, and have the integrity, and your reputation will follow that.
Well, that's why you're a living legend. That's what you've done, Michele. Seriously, I mean, really seriously. And I think that is a fantastic place for us to stop. Even though I could talk to you all day, and I probably will continue to talk to you all day.
I hope so.
But we really, both of us, appreciate this opportunity to be with you all. And we hope you have a very, very blessed year.
Thank you. Thank you very much, too.
Thank you, Michele. It's been fantastic.